The text message glowed on my phone screen like a tiny bomb, the blue light illuminating my face in the darkness of my car. I was sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store, bags of ingredients for tomorrow's Sunday dinner in the trunk, when my phone buzzed with a message from my wife, Caroline. "Hey babe, heads up, Dad's doing a family dinner next Saturday at the country club. Just immediate family. You know how he is about these things. I'll be there for a few hours, but home by 9. Levi? I read it 3 times, my thumb hovering over the screen, trying to understand what I was reading. Family dinner, just immediate family. I'd been married to Caroline for 6 years. We had a daughter together, Emma, who was 4 years old. Her father, Richard Montgomery, had been in my life for 8 years, if you counted the 2 years we dated before marriage. 8 years of Sunday brunches at their estate. 8 years of holiday gatherings and birthday celebrations and family vacations. 8 years of me showing up, participating, contributing, trying to be the son-in-law he could be proud of, and I wasn't invited to the family dinner because it was for family only. The grocery bags in my trunk contained ingredients for a special meal I'd planned to cook for Caroline's parents tomorrow. Her mother Patricia had mentioned she was craving my homemade lasagna. The recipe I'd spent months perfecting because Richard had once commented that the Italian place they frequented never got it quite right. I'd bought imported Italian sausage from the specialty market across town, fresh pasta sheets from the artisan shop, 3 types of cheese I had to visit 2 different stores to find. I'd planned to spend 4 hours tomorrow making this meal, making sure every layer was perfect, because that's what I did. I tried. I always tried. The November air was cold enough that I could see my breath fogging the windows of my sedan, but I felt hot, flushed, like my body couldn't decide if it was processing anger or humiliation or just shock. My hands were shaking slightly as I set the phone down in the cup holder, and I noticed I'd been gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had gone white. Family only. The words kept echoing in my head, bouncing around like they were looking for somewhere to land, somewhere to make sense. But they didn't make sense. Or maybe they made perfect sense, and I'd just been too blind to see it all along. I started the car and drove home on autopilot, my mind racing through 8 years of memories, suddenly seeing them all through a different lens. The comments I'd brushed off as jokes, the subtle exclusions I'd rationalized as misunderstandings, the moments where I'd felt like an outsider looking in, watching Caroline's family interact with an ease and intimacy that never quite extended to me, no matter how hard I tried to bridge that gap. Our house was in a modest neighborhood about 20 minutes from the Montgomery estate. Not modest by most people's standards, I suppose. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a decent yard where Emma played, but modest compared to the sprawling property where Caroline had grown up. The one with the circular driveway and the professionally landscaped gardens and the pool house that was bigger than our entire first floor. Caroline was in the living room when I walked in, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, watching some reality show on the TV. She looked up when I entered, smiled that smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, the one that used to make me feel like the luckiest man alive. "Hey, you were gone a while. Did you get everything for tomorrow?" I set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter, started unpacking them mechanically, putting things in the fridge without really seeing them. "Yeah, got everything. The good Italian sausage, the fresh pasta, all of it. Dad's going to love it. You know how he gets about your lasagna?" I closed the refrigerator door, leaned against it, looked at my wife sitting there comfortable and casual in our home. "Carolyn, about your dad's dinner next Saturday. The family only one." She glanced up from her phone, where she was scrolling through something. "What about it? I'm your husband. We have a daughter together. Why am I not invited to a family dinner?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable, at least. Set down her wine glass, tucked her blonde hair behind her ear in that nervous gesture she did when she was trying to figure out how to say something difficult. "It's not like that. Marcus, Dad just wants to have dinner with his kids and grandkids. Like, his actual children. It's not personal." "How is that not personal?" "I'm married to his actual child. I'm the father of his grandchild. You know how Dad is. He's traditional about these things. His family dinners are for blood relatives. He's always been that way. Even when Kevin was married to Amanda, Kevin's ex, she didn't come to these dinners either. Kevin was Carlene's older brother. He'd been divorced for 3 years. I'd never known his ex-wife well. She'd been out of the picture before I came along. But I suddenly wondered if she'd felt the same confused hurt, if she'd also spent years trying to break into a family that had an invisible wall around it. Caroline, we've been married for 6 years, together for 8. At what point do I stop being an outsider? You're not an outsider. Don't be dramatic. It's just one dinner. Dad wants to talk to us about some family business stuff. You'd probably be bored anyway. It's going to be a lot of talk about the company and investments and trust funds. Nothing you need to worry about. Nothing I needed to worry about. Except my wife was going to a family meeting about finances and business that I wasn't included in. Despite the fact that those finances and business decisions affected our household, affected our future, affected our daughter's inheritance presumably, but I wasn't invited because I wasn't really family. I wanted to push it, wanted to make her see how wrong this was. But Caroline had already picked up her phone again, scrolling through Instagram or whatever, the conversation over as far as she was concerned. And I realized this was a fight I wasn't going to win. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I finished putting away the groceries in silence, then went upstairs to check on Emma. She was asleep in her bedroom, the nightlight casting soft shadows across her small face. She looked like Caroline, same blonde hair, same delicate features, but she had my eyes, my stubborn chin. She was the one Montgomery who I knew absolutely was mine, who I didn't have to prove myself worthy of. I stood there in the doorway watching her sleep, and something shifted inside me. A crack in a foundation I didn't know was already weak. This little girl was going to grow up in a world where her father was treated as less than, where Grandpa Richard had family dinners that included her, but not her dad. Where she'd learn that some people were family and some people were just married to family, and those were different things with different rules. That night, I lay awake in bed next to Caroline, listening to her breathe, feeling the distance between us, even though we were only inches apart. 8 years. How had I spent 8 years not seeing this clearly? Or had I seen it and just refused to acknowledge it? Too busy trying to prove myself worthy to notice I was fighting a battle that had been lost before it started? Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how I got here. How a guy from a working class background in Milwaukee fell in love with a woman whose family name was on hospital wings in university buildings. How I spent 8 years building a life with someone whose father would never see me as anything but the outsider who married his daughter. I met Carolyn Montgomery when I was 28. Working as a mechanical engineer at an automotive design firm in Detroit. I'd worked my way through state school, graduated with honors, landed a decent job, was making okay money and living in a small apartment with a roommate. Nothing fancy, but I was proud of what I'd built from nothing. My father had been a factory worker, died when I was 16 from a heart attack on the line. My mother had worked 2 jobs to help me and my sister get through school. I knew what struggle looked like, knew what it took to climb from where I'd started to where I was. And I was still climbing, still ambitious, still believing that hard work and dedication would eventually lead to the success and stability I'd always dreamed of. Caroline was in Detroit for a friend's wedding. I met her at the reception, assigned to the same table by virtue of both of us knowing the bride but not knowing many other guests. She was beautiful, obviously, but it was more than that. She was magnetic, confident in a way that came from never having to worry about money or status or whether people would take you seriously. She laughed easily, talked to everyone, made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room when she turned her attention to me. We talked all night about her work in nonprofit fundraising, about my work in engineering, about travel and books and the terrible DJ the bride had hired. She told me she lived in Chicago, working for an arts organization her family supported. She didn't mention until much later that supporting meant her father had endowed it with a multi-million-dollar gift. I asked for her number. She gave it to me with a smile that suggested she'd been hoping I would ask. We started long-distance dating, me driving from Detroit to Chicago every other weekend. Her coming to Detroit on the weekends in between. It was inconvenient and expensive, eating up most of my free time and discretionary income. But I didn't care. I was falling in love. She was different from anyone I'd ever dated. She had traveled the world, spoke French fluently, knew about wine and art and all these things I'd never had exposure to growing up. But she never made me feel stupid for not knowing things. She seemed charmed by my background, by my stories about working construction jobs in the summer to help pay for school, by my close relationship with my mother and sister. 6 months in, she invited me to meet her parents. I'd been nervous, knowing from things she'd said that they were wealthy, that they had expectations for who their children dated and married. She'd dated men from prominent families before me, guys who went to prep schools and Ivy League colleges, guys whose last names I recognized from business news and society pages. But she wanted me to meet them, she said, because she was serious about me, because she could see a future with me, because her family would love me once they got to know me. The Montgomery estate was in Winnetka, one of those old money suburbs north of Chicago where the houses hide behind gates, and the property taxes cost more than I made in a year. The house itself was a brick, Georgian colonial, probably built in the 20s. With that old money elegance that new money can never quite replicate. Richard Montgomery opened the door himself, which surprised me. I'd half expected a butler. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of commanding presence that probably made boardrooms quiet when he entered. His handshake was firm, his eyes assessing. Not hostile, but definitely evaluating. "So, you're the engineer Caroline's been seeing, Marcus Izet?" "Yes, sir." "Marcus Chun. It's a pleasure to meet you, Chun." "That's Chinese?" "Yes, sir. My paternal grandfather emigrated from Taiwan in the 50s. MM. And what do your parents do?" "My father passed when I was 16. He worked in manufacturing. My mother is a bank teller." I watched something flicker across his face. Not disapproval exactly, but a kind of noting, a filing away of information that confirmed something he'd expected. I wasn't from their world. That much was immediately clear. Patricia Montgomery was warmer, at least on the surface. She welcomed me with a smile, asked about my drive from Detroit, offered She had Caroline's features, that same bone structure and blonde hair, though hers was highlighted to hide the gray. She was elegant in a way that seemed effortless, but was probably the result of considerable time and money. Dinner was in a formal dining room with a table that could seat, though it was just the four of us plus Caroline's brother Kevin. The meal was served by staff, courses appearing and disappearing with quiet efficiency. I tried to remember which fork was for what. Tried to match their casual competence with fine dining etiquette I'd never learned growing up. The conversation centered on topics I knew nothing about. Their upcoming trip to their house in Aspen, a fundraiser for the symphony that Patricia was chairing, discussions about people I'd never heard of, mentioned by first name like everyone should know who they were. Kevin talked about his work at the family's real estate investment firm, using financial terms I only half understood. Caroline tried to include me, asking me questions about my work, but even she seemed to realize how out of place I was. The engineering I did, designing components for mass-market vehicles, felt small and practical compared to Kevin discussing multi-million-dollar commercial real estate deals. "Engineering is a solid profession," Richard said at one point, his tone suggesting that solid was good but not impressive. Good living, practical skills. "My father always said the world needs engineers. Someone has to design the things we all use." It was a compliment, I suppose, but it felt like being patted on the head. "You're useful, like a serviceable appliance, but you're not important, not like us." After dinner, Richard asked to speak with me privately in his study. It was the kind of room I'd only seen in movies, all dark wood and leather furniture and shelves lined with first editions. He poured himself a scotch from a crystal decanter, didn't offer me one. "Caroline's my only daughter," he said, settling into a leather chair and regarding me over the rim of his glass. "Her mother and I have certain expectations for who she ends up with." "I understand, sir, do you? Because I'm not sure you do. This family has a certain standing. We have businesses, properties, trusts, legacies to protect. When Caroline eventually marries, that person becomes entangled in all of that. It's not just about love, Marcus. It's about compatibility on multiple levels. I love your daughter, sir. I'll work hard to provide for her, to build a good life together. I'm sure you will. But Caroline has never had to worry about money. She's never had to work hard just to maintain a basic standard of living. She's accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Can you provide that on an engineer's salary?" The question hung in the air. We both knew the answer. No, not at the level she was accustomed to. Not without significant help. "I can provide a good life," I said carefully. "Maybe not at the same scale she grew up with, but a happy, stable life." I thought that's what mattered. "Love is important," Richard agreed, in a tone that suggested it was important but not sufficient. "But so is practical compatibility. I'm not forbidding you from seeing my daughter. I'm just making sure you understand what you're getting into. The challenges you'll face, the expectations that will be placed on you." I left that meeting feeling like I'd failed some tests I didn't know I was taking, but Caroline seemed pleased that I'd met her parents, told me her mother thought I was polite, and her father appreciated my work ethic. I chose to believe her interpretation rather than trust my own instincts about how that evening had actually gone. We kept dating. After a year, I got a job offer from a firm in Chicago, better pay and better title. I took it partly for career advancement, but mostly to be in the same city as Caroline. We moved in together, a nice apartment in Lincoln Park that was more expensive than I could afford alone, but that we split. Though even splitting it, I was paying more of my income proportionally than she was, since she had family money supplementing her nonprofit salary. I started spending more time with her family. Sunday brunches became a regular thing. Holiday celebrations, family gatherings. I tried hard to fit in, to learn their ways, to become someone Richard could approve of. I read the Wall Street Journal every day so I could discuss markets and business news. I took a wine appreciation course so I wouldn't be lost when they discussed I learned to golf so I could join Richard and Kevin for their Saturday morning rounds. With every effort, I thought I was making progress. Richard would nod approvingly when I made an insightful comment about a stock or a political issue. Patricia complimented my manners. Kevin started inviting me to business events. Caroline beamed when her parents praised me, told me they were really warming up to me. I proposed after 2 years of dating. I'd saved 4 months to buy a ring from a jeweler Richard had once mentioned was good. Not a huge diamond, I couldn't afford that, but a quality one, properly certified, in a classic setting that seemed appropriate for someone like Caroline. I proposed at the Morton Arboretum on a spring afternoon, under the flowering trees. Private but beautiful. She said yes. She cried happy tears. She called her parents immediately to tell them the news. Their response was muted. Congratulations. Of course, they were happy if she was happy. But there was a quality to their happiness that felt forced, like they were trying to be supportive of a decision they didn't fully endorse. The wedding was a year later. The Montgomerys paid for most of it, which Richa made clear was a gift, but also felt like a reminder of the financial disparity between our families. My mother contributed what she could, a few $1,000s that represented significant sacrifice for her. My sister was in the wedding party, but the guest list was 70% Caroline's family and friends. In a venue her family had connections to, with details that Patricia orchestrated while consulting Caroline, but never consulting me. I didn't mind. Or I told myself I didn't mind. This was her family's tradition, their way of doing things. I was just grateful to be marrying Carolyn. The wedding day itself was beautiful. Caroline looked stunning. The ceremony was at a historic church in Winnetka, the reception at the country club. I remember standing at the altar, watching Caroline walk down the aisle on her father's arm, thinking this was the beginning of my real life. The life where I'd finally proved myself worthy, where I'd be part of this family, not just someone marrying into it. Richard's toast at the reception was gracious but distant. He welcomed me to the family, said he was pleased Caroline had found someone hardworking and dependable. Not someone she loved deeply, not someone who made her happy, but someone dependable. Like I was a solid investment, not a person she'd chosen to spend her life with. But I was too happy to care, too optimistic, too convinced that time would eventually break down any remaining walls between me and the Montgomery family. We honeymooned in Italy, a trip the Montgomerys gifted us. 2 weeks in Tuscany and the Amalfi Coast, staying in places that cost more per night than I made in a week. It was magical. We drank wine in hillside vineyards and ate pasta in ancient piazzas and made love in luxury hotels with views of the Mediterranean. I'd never felt more in love or more hopeful about our future. When we got back, we started building our life together. Caroline kept working at the nonprofit. I kept advancing in my engineering career. We bought a house. Though the down payment was mostly from money the Montgomerys gifted Caroline as a wedding present, I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the day-to-day expenses. She contributed, but proportionally less. And there was always an understanding that her family money was hers, separate, not to be relied on for our household needs. The Sunday brunches continued. The holiday gatherings, the family vacations I was now invited to, though there were often moments that made it clear I was an addition rather than a core member. Photos where I wasn't included because it was just the Montgomery kids and grandkids. Conversations about family history or inside jokes that I wasn't part of. Financial discussions that would stop when I entered the room, resumed in vaguer terms, or postponed until I wasn't there. 2 years into marriage, Caroline got pregnant. Emma was born on a snowy January morning, perfect and healthy, with Caroline's coloring and my features. I thought having a grandchild would finally cement my place in the family, would make me more than just Caroline's husband, would prove I was contributing to the Montgomery legacy, creating the next generation. Richard was pleased about Emma. He visited the hospital, held her carefully, made appropriate grandfatherly comments, but I noticed he didn't ask about her name until Caroline told him we'd named her Emma Grace June Montgomery, using both our last names. I watched Richard's face when Caroline said the full name. Watched him process that his granddaughter would carry my last name as well as his. Watched something tighten around his mouth before he smiled and said it was lovely. The years passed. I worked hard at my job, eventually making senior engineer and then principal engineer, earning good money, over $120,000 a year. I worked hard at being a good husband to Caroline, supporting her work and her interests, planning date nights and weekend getaways, trying to keep our marriage strong. I worked hard at being a good father to Emma, reading bedtime stories and building elaborate pillow forts and attending every preschool event. And I worked hard at being a good son. That was perhaps where I worked the hardest. I showed up to every family event. I volunteered to help with things around the Montgomery estate, fixing things that broke, doing yard work, whatever was needed. I remembered birthdays and brought thoughtful gifts. I learned Patricia's favorite flowers and Richard's favorite whiskey. I made that perfect lasagna because Richard had commented once about liking Italian food. I thought I was making progress. Thought each year brought me closer to being truly accepted. Thought my efforts were gradually eroding whatever reservations they'd had about me. I was wrong. I'd been working for 8 years to be seen as family, and I was no closer than I'd been on that first awkward dinner. I've just gotten better at not seeing it, at rationalizing the small exclusions and subtle dismissals, at telling myself that next time, next year, next achievement, that would be when they finally accepted me completely. But the family dinner invitation, or lack thereof, made it impossible to rationalize anymore. Made it impossible to pretend I was making progress. Because after 8 years, after marriage and a child, and countless efforts to prove myself worthy, I still wasn't invited to a family dinner. Because I still wasn't family, and maybe I never would be. Asterisk, 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 the Sunday after Caroline told me about the family dinner, I made the lasagna anyway. Spent 4 hours in the kitchen, layering ingredients with precision, making sure every element was perfect. Because that's what I did. I kept trying even when it was clear trying wouldn't matter. Caroline's parents came over for dinner as planned. Richard shook my hand at the door. Patricia kissed my cheek, both of them smiling and pleasant. They played with Emma, brought her a stuffed animal from some store I'd never heard of. They complimented the house, though I noticed Patricia's eyes lingering on the worn couch and the kitchen that needed updating. We sat down to eat, and Richard took his first bite of the lasagna, chewed thoughtfully, nodded. This is excellent, Marcus. Really outstanding. You know, we were just talking about how hard it is to find good Italian food around here. This is better than anything we've gotten at restaurants.
Thank you, sir.
I'm glad you enjoy it. You should open a restaurant, Patricia said with a laugh. You'd make a fortune. We all laughed, like it was a joke. But I wondered if they heard what I heard in that comment. That cooking was a nice hobby, maybe even a monetizable skill, but not a real profession. Not like engineering. Not like running multi-million-dollar investment firms. The dinner conversation was pleasant enough. Discussion about Emma's preschool, about the upcoming holidays, about a foundation event Patricia was planning. No mention of next Saturday's dinner. No mention of the fact that Caroline would be attending and I wouldn't. It hung in the air unspoken. This elephant we were all pretending didn't exist. After dinner, Richard asked to see some work I'd been doing on our deck, repairs I'd mentioned at a previous brunch. We went outside while Patricia helped Caroline clear the table, leaving Emma watching a movie in the living room. The November evening was cold, the kind of crisp cold that makes everything sharp and clear. Our breath fogged in the air as I showed Richard the new boards I'd installed, explained the weatherproofing process I'd used. You're handy, he said, inspecting my work. That's good. Important to be able to take care of your own home. I grew up doing this kind of stuff. My dad taught me before he passed. Factory worker, Carolyn said. Yes, sir. Automotive assembly, Richard nodded, looking out at our modest backyard. Different world from how Caroline grew up. Yes, sir. You've done well for yourself, Marcus. You should be proud. Coming from where you came from, getting the education you got, the career you've built, that takes character. I waited. There was clearly more coming. But Caroline's world is different. She was raised with certain expectations, certain standards. And as her father, I need to make sure those standards are maintained. I work hard to provide a good life for her and Emma. I know you do. But there's what you can provide, and then there's what she's accustomed to. Those aren't always the same thing. Sir, if you're concerned about our finances, we're doing fine. My salary, he held up a hand. I'm not questioning your ability to pay your bills, Marcus. I'm talking about something bigger than that. About legacy, about family, about making sure my daughter and granddaughter have the kind of life they deserve. They do have a good life. A good life, yes. But is it the Montgomery life? Is it the life Caroline grew up with? The opportunities Emma should have? I felt my jaw tighten. Emma has plenty of opportunities. She goes to a good preschool. She'll go to good schools. We'll make sure she has everything she needs. Everything she needs. Yes. But what about everything she deserves? What about the legacy she should inherit? The connections, the advantages, the security that comes from being part of something larger than a middle-class suburban existence? There it was. The thing that had been lurking beneath every interaction for 8 years. The fundamental belief that what I could provide wasn't enough. That I wasn't enough. Not because of anything I'd done or failed to do, but because of where I came from. Because I wasn't born into their world and could never truly belong in it no matter how hard I tried. "I'm doing my best," I said quietly. "I know you are, and it's commendable. But sometimes doing your best isn't the same as being able to provide what's needed. That's not a criticism of you personally, Marcus. It's just reality." We stood there in the cold November air, my father-in-law's words hanging between us like a verdict. I'd been tried by a court I didn't know existed, found wanting by standards I couldn't meet, sentenced to a permanent status as outsider in my own family. "Is that why I'm not invited to next Saturday's dinner?" I asked. "Because I'm not really family." Richard had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Caroline told you about that?" "She mentioned it, said it was just for immediate family." "It is. It's for my children and grandchildren. To discuss family business matters. I'm married to your child. I'm the father of your grandchild. Doesn't that make me family? Legally? Yes. But family business is complicated. Marcus, there are trusts and estates and financial matters that concern bloodline descendants. It's nothing personal. It's just how these things are structured. Everything you've said to me tonight is personal. You've spent 8 years making it clear that I'm not good enough for your daughter, that I can't provide the life she deserves, that I'm fundamentally an outsider. And you're telling me it's not personal. I've never said you're not good enough. I've said you come from a different background. That's a fact, not a judgment. It's both. And you know it. Richard looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Not anger or disapproval. Pity. He pitied me for not understanding my place, for thinking I could ever be more than Carlene's hard-working husband from the wrong side of the tracks, for believing that 8 years of effort could overcome the circumstances of my birth. "I think we should head back inside," he said. "Patricia will wonder where we are." We went back and finished the evening with coffee and small talk. Richard and Patricia left around 9, thanking me again for the wonderful meal, kissing Emma goodbye, hugging Caroline. Richard shook my hand at the door, the same firm handshake he'd given me 8 years ago, and I understood that nothing had changed. Nothing would ever change. After they left, I cleaned up the kitchen while Caroline put Emma to bed. When she came back downstairs, I was wiping down the counters, putting away the last of the dishes. "That went well," she said, pouring herself more wine. "Dad really loved your lasagna. Did you see how much he ate? He liked it. And Mom said she's going to hire you to fix some things at their house. The deck railing needs work, and there's something wrong with one of the guest bedroom doors. She said you're so handy, better than any contractor they've hired. Handy. Like a good appliance. Useful, but not important. Caroline, your dad and I talked outside about the deck. He said the repairs looked great. About the family dinner, about why I'm not invited." She set down her wine glass, her expression guarded. "What did he say?" "He said it's for bloodline descendants only. For discussing family business matters that don't concern me." Well, that's true. It is about family business. The trusts and stuff. You wouldn't be interested in that. How do you know what I'd be interested in? And how is it family business that doesn't concern me when it directly affects our household? When decisions about money and estates impact Emma's future, I'm Emma's father, but I'm not included in discussions about her inheritance. You're overreacting. It's just one dinner. Dad does this sometimes, wants to meet with just his kids. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. It's about what it represents. I'm not considered family, Caroline. After 8 years, I'm still just the guy who married his daughter. I'm still an outsider. That's not true. You're family. We're married. We have a child together. Of course, your family. Then why am I not invited to family dinners? Why does your father talk to me like I'm a well-meaning charity case who happened to marry his daughter? Why do I feel like I've spent 8 years trying to prove I'm worthy and I'm no closer than I was on day one? Caroline looked at me like I was being difficult, like I was manufacturing a problem out of nothing. You're being sensitive. Dad likes you. Mom likes you. They're grateful for everything you do for me and Emma. They appreciate you, like they'd appreciate good help, but that's not the same as accepting someone as family. Marcus, I don't know what you want me to say. This is how my family is. They have certain ways of doing things. If you can't accept that, I've been accepting it for 8 years. I've been trying to fit into your family's ways, to meet your father's standards, to prove I'm good enough. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of trying to earn acceptance from people who've decided I'm not really one of them no matter what I do. So what are you saying? You're giving up. You're not going to try anymore. The question hung in the air. Was I giving up? Or was I finally seeing clearly? Finally acknowledging that no amount of effort would change their fundamental view of me. Finally accepting that some doors would never open no matter how hard I knocked, I'm saying I'm done pretending it's normal to be excluded from family events after 8 years of marriage. I'm done rationalizing behavior that's designed to remind me of my place. I'm done working myself to exhaustion trying to prove I'm worthy of being treated like family. Caroline crossed her arm, defensive now. You're being unfair. My parents have been nothing but gracious to you. They've welcomed you, included you in holidays and vacations, helped us with the house. They've done a lot for you. They've done a lot for their daughter who happened to marry me. There's a difference. And, Caroline, your father doesn't see me as family. There's this line that I can't cross no matter what I do. You've always known it. She looked away, wouldn't meet my eyes. That was answer enough. I'm going to bed, I said. I have work early tomorrow. I left her standing in the kitchen with her wine. Went upstairs to our bedroom, lay in the dark, listening to her move around downstairs. Eventually she came up, got ready for bed, climbed in next to me without saying anything. We lay there in the darkness, inches apart, miles away from each other. And I realized that the distance between us had always been there. I've just been too busy trying to bridge it to notice how wide it actually was. The week leading up to the family dinner was strange. Carolyn and I moved around each other carefully, like we were both aware something had shifted, but neither of us wanted to acknowledge it directly. She went to work, I went to work, we took care of Emma, we had dinners together, we performed all the routines of married life, but underneath it all was this new awareness, at least for me, that our marriage existed within a framework I'd never fully understood. I started paying attention to things I'd been overlooking for years, the way Caroline talked about her family's plans without automatically including me. The way she'd say, we're going to Aspen for Christmas, meeting her family, then add you're welcome to come if you want, like I was an optional guest rather than her husband. The way she kept her family money completely separate from our household finances, contributing to bills, but maintaining a clear distinction between what was hers and what was ours. I'd always rationalized these things as reasonable boundaries, as maintaining some independence within our marriage. Now, I wondered if they were actually walls, carefully maintained barriers that ensured I never got too close to the core of who the Montgomerys really were. Thursday night, 3 days before the family dinner, Caroline was on the phone with her mother discussing logistics. I was in the living room with Emma, building a tower out of blocks, half listening to the conversation happening in the kitchen. No, Marcus's plans that night. I heard Caroline say, he's fine with me going alone. It's no problem. I hadn't said I had plans. I hadn't said I was fine with her going alone. She was just creating a narrative that made my exclusion seem mutual. Something I'd agreed to rather than something being done to me. When she hung up, I walked into the kitchen. I don't have plans Saturday night. She looked startled, like she'd forgotten I was in the house. What? You told your mother I have plans? I don't know. I figured you'd want to do something. Maybe hang out with friends or work on that deck project you mentioned. I didn't want Mom to feel bad about you not being invited, so you lied to make her feel better about excluding me. I didn't lie. I assumed. And it's not a big deal, Marcus. Why are you making this into such a thing? Because it is a thing. You're going to a family dinner that I'm not invited to, and you're covering for your parents' rudeness by pretending I chose not to come. It's not rudeness. It's just how Dad does these family meetings. Family meetings I'm not part of, despite being family. Despite being your husband and Emma's father, she set down the dish towel she'd been holding, faced me with an expression I'd seen before when we disagreed about something. Patient, slightly condescending, like I was being unreasonable and she was being the adult. What do you want me to do? Tell my father that I'm not coming unless he invites you. Make this into some big confrontation. Would that be so terrible, standing up for your husband? Telling your father that excluding me after 8 years is hurtful and wrong. You don't understand how my family works. Dad is very particular about these things. If I make a fuss, it'll just make everything uncomfortable. It's already uncomfortable. I'm just the only one who seems to care. That's not fair. I care. But I also understand that sometimes you have to pick your battles. This isn't worth fighting over. What would be worth fighting over? At what point is my dignity, my place in this family, worth defending? She didn't answer, just looked at me with frustration and something else I couldn't quite identify. Resignation maybe, or acceptance of something she'd always known but I was only now figuring out. I need to finish the dishes, she said, turning away from me. Emma needs a bath soon. I stood there in our kitchen, dismissed, the conversation over as far as Caroline was concerned. And I realized that this was the pattern of our entire marriage. Anytime I raised concerns about our family, about how they treated me, about the ways I felt excluded or diminished, she deflected, changed the subject, made it about me being sensitive instead of about them being exclusionary. I'd let her do it for 8 years because I wanted to believe her version. Wanted to think I was just being insecure, that I was imagining problems that didn't exist. But I wasn't imagining anything. I was finally seeing clearly. Saturday came. Caroline spent the afternoon getting ready, choosing an outfit carefully, doing her hair and makeup like she was going somewhere important. She was, I supposed, going to an important family dinner with important family, just not with me. "What time will you be home?" I asked, as she checked herself in the mirror one last time. "Probably around 9, maybe a little later if dinner runs long." "And what should I tell Emma when she asks where Mommy is?" "Tell her I'm having dinner with Grandpa and Grandma." "She understand, will Wouldn't want you to be late to the family dinner." She grabbed her purse, kissed Emma goodbye, and left without kissing me. I heard her car pull out of the driveway, watched through the window as she drove away to be with her real family. The family I'd never truly be part of, no matter how hard I tried. Emma and I had a nice evening. We made pizza together, her little hands helping spread sauce and sprinkled cheese. We watched a movie. She'll wonder why she's not invited to dinner with her grandparents. Why her daddy's not invited? Caroline turned to face me, her expression tired. "Can we not do this?" I gave her a bath right and now. Read 3 bedtime stories instead of the usual one because she kept asking for more and I had nothing but time. After she was asleep, I sat in the quiet house and thought about my marriage, my life, the past 8 years. Thought about all the times I'd worked late to earn more money. All the Sunday brunches I'd attended and smiled through. All the family vacations where I'd felt like a tolerated guest. All the efforts I'd made to be good enough. None of it had mattered. I could see that now. Richard Montgomery had decided 8 years ago that I wasn't really family, and nothing I'd done had changed his mind, and Caroline had accepted that, had expected me to accept it too, had been annoyed when I finally stopped accepting it. Around 10, I heard Caroline's car in the driveway. She came in looking satisfied, like she'd had a good evening. Found me sitting in the living room in the dark, just the light from the street lamp coming through the window. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, flipping on the lamp. "Thinking about what about us? About your family? About what I'm doing here?" She sighed, set down her purse. "Are we really going to do this tonight? I'm tired." It was a long dinner. How was it the family dinner I wasn't invited to? It was fine. We talked about family business, estate planning stuff, trust fund details, exactly what I told you it would be. "Did you talk about Emma's trust fund? About her future? About her inheritance?" "Yes. Dad's setting up an education trust for her. It's all very standard." "And did anyone think maybe Emma's father should be part of that discussion? Maybe I should know what's being planned for my daughter's future. It's Montgomery family money. It's being kept in the family. You don't need to be involved in those details. She's my daughter too. Anything involving her future involves me. Legally, the trust is set up through the Montgomery side. You don't have any say in it." There it was. The truth laid bare. I had no say. I had no involvement. I was just the father who happened to contribute DNA but wasn't really part of the family that would shape Emma's future. "Did it ever occur to you," I said slowly, "that this is wrong? That excluding your husband from important family discussions is wrong? That treating me like an outsider after 8 years is wrong? You're not an outsider. You're not part of certain things. That's normal. Every family has internal dynamics. Normal families include spouses. Normal families treat in-laws like family after 8 years of marriage and a child together. My family isn't like other families. We have money, we have businesses, we have legacies to protect. That means some things stay within bloodlines. It's not personal. Everything about this is personal. Your father has never accepted me. He's never seen me as good enough for you. And you've gone along with it. You've expected me to just accept being treated as less than. I haven't expected anything except for you to understand that my relationship with my family existed long before you came along. They're important to me. Their approval matters to me more than your marriage matters to you." She looked away, wouldn't answer that question. "That was answer enough. I'm going to bed," she said. "I don't want to fight about this anymore. We're not fighting. We're finally being honest. Or at least I am. She went upstairs. I stayed in the living room for another hour, sitting in the dim light, letting the truth of my situation fully sink in. I'd spent 8 years trying to earn a place in a family that had no place for me. I'd sacrificed time and energy and pride trying to prove I was worthy to people who'd decided I wasn't worthy before they even met me. And Caroline had let me do it, had watched me struggle and sacrifice and try so hard, and had never told me the truth, that I was never going to be accepted, that her father would never see me as family, that I was fighting a battle I'd lost before it started. The question was, what was I going to do about it now? Sunday morning, I woke up with unusual clarity. I'd made a decision sometime in the night, though I hadn't consciously realized it until I opened my eyes and the plan was just there, fully formed. I got Emma up and dressed, made her breakfast, told Caroline I was taking Emma to see my mother and sister for the day. Caroline seemed relieved, probably happy to have the house to herself after the tension of the previous night. My mother lived in a small house on the south side, the house I'd grown up in. My sister Rachel lived about 20 minutes away with her husband and 2 kids. I called them both that morning, asked if we could all get together, said I needed to talk to them about something important. We met at my mother's house around 11. Rachel brought her kids, who immediately started playing with Emma in the backyard. My mother made coffee, set out cookies she'd baked, settled in at the kitchen table with that look that said she knew something was wrong and was prepared to help however she could. "What's going on, Margus?" my sister asked. "You sounded serious on the phone." I told him everything. About the family dinner I wasn't invited to, about Richard's comments over the years that I'd rationalized or ignored, about feeling like an outsider in my own family, about Caroline's acceptance of her parents' behavior and her expectation that I accept it too. My mother listened with increasing concern, her hand over her mouth. Rachel's face got progressively angrier as I talked. 8 years, Rachel said when I finished. 8 years of you bending over backward for those people, and they still don't consider you family. That's what it seems like. And Caroline just goes along with it. Doesn't defend you, doesn't tell her father that his behavior is inappropriate. She says that's just how our family is, that I need to understand their dynamics. Their dynamics are treating you like hired help, my mother said quietly. Like you're good enough to work for them, to fix things around their house, to father their grandchild, but not good enough to be included in family matters. That's exactly how it feels. "What are you going to do?" Rachel asked. "I don't know yet. But I know I can't keep living like this. I can't keep trying to earn acceptance from people who've decided I'm not acceptable. I can't keep being married to someone who prioritizes her parents' approval over her husband's dignity. Are you thinking about divorce?" my mother asked, her voice careful. "I don't know, maybe I just know something has to change. Either Caroline needs to wake up and realize how wrong this situation is, or I need to wake up and realize this marriage isn't what I thought it was." We talked for another hour. My mother shared stories I'd forgotten, times over the years when the Montgomerys had been subtly dismissive or exclusionary that I'd brushed off at the time. Rachel reminded me of conversations I'd had with her where I'd mentioned feeling like an outsider, but it always concluded with, "But it's getting better," or "But they're coming around." "It wasn't getting better," Rachel said. "You were just getting better at accepting unacceptable treatment." She was right. That's exactly what I'd been doing. Normalizing behavior that wasn't normal, accepting treatment I should have rejected, building a life on a foundation that was never solid to begin with. When we left my mother's house that afternoon, Emma chattering happily about playing with her cousins, I felt different, clearer, less confused about what was happening and more certain about what needed to happen next. I drove home, taking the long route, processing, planning. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I knew what I was going to do. Caroline was in the kitchen when we walked in, making dinner. She smiled at Emma, asked if she'd had fun at Grandma's house, barely looked at me. After dinner, after Emma was in bed, I sat Caroline down at the kitchen table. She looked wary, like she knew this conversation was coming and wasn't looking forward to it. "I need to tell you some things," I said, "and I need you to really listen, instead of just waiting to defend your parents." "Okay," she said carefully. "I've spent 8 years trying to be good enough for your family, working harder, earning more, learning about things I didn't grow up knowing about, trying to fit into a world I wasn't born into. I've done all of this because I love you and because I wanted to be part of your family. I wanted your father's respect. I wanted to belong. You do belong." "No, I don't. And we both know it. Your father has never accepted me. He's been polite. He's been gracious in his way, but he's never seen me as family. He's never seen me as worthy of his daughter. And you've known that all along." "That's not true. Caroline, stop. Just stop defending him for once. Stop pretending this is normal. Stop acting like I'm being unreasonable for wanting to be treated like family after 8 years of marriage." She was quiet. her hands folded on the table in front of her, not meeting my eyes. I need you to choose, I said. I need you to decide what's more important, your parents' approval or your marriage, because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the outsider in my own family. I can't keep being dismissed and excluded while you act like that's just how things are. What are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to stand up for me. I'm asking you to tell your father that his behavior is wrong, that excluding me from family dinners after 8 years is wrong, that treating me like I'm not really family is wrong. I'm asking you to set boundaries with your parents about how they treat me. And if I can't do that, if you can't do that, then we have a bigger problem than your parents. Then we have a problem with our marriage, because a partnership means standing together. It means defending each other. It means putting your spouse first sometimes, even when that's hard. She looked up at me finally, and there were tears in her eyes. But I couldn't tell if they were tears of understanding or tears of frustration that I was making her choose. I need to think, she said. Okay, think. But while you're thinking, I'm going to be making some changes. I'm done going to Sunday brunches at your parents' house. I'm done attending family events where I'm treated like a tolerated guest. I'm done trying to earn acceptance from people who've decided I'm not acceptable. If they want a relationship with me, if they want to be part of Emma's life through me, they need to treat me like family. Actually treat me like family. Not just say the words while acting otherwise. You can't keep Emma from her grandparents. I'm not keeping Emma from anyone. I'm setting boundaries about how I'll be treated. Your parents can see Emma anytime they want, but they'll see her through you, or at supervised visits, or at neutral locations. They won't be coming to this house anymore, not until they can treat the man who owns this house with respect. This is extreme. What's extreme is spending 8 years being treated as less than and being expected to just accept it. What's extreme is my wife going to family dinners I'm excluded from and acting like that's normal. What's extreme is raising a daughter in an environment where she learns that daddy is somehow not as important as mommy's family. Caroline was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. I don't want our marriage to end over this. Then don't let it end over this. Stand up for me. Set boundaries with your parents. Be my wife instead of just being their daughter. I don't know if I can. And there it was. The truth I'd been avoiding for 8 years. Caroline didn't know if she could choose me over her parents. Didn't know if she could set boundaries with people she'd spent her whole life trying to please. Didn't know if our marriage was worth the discomfort of standing up to her father. Then you need to figure that out, I said. Because I'm done being second place in my own marriage. I got up from the table, left her sitting there crying, went upstairs to the guest bedroom. I'd sleep there from now on, I decided. Until she chose. The next few weeks were tense. Caroline and I moved around each other like polite roommates. We coordinated Emma's care, discussed household logistics, maintained the appearance of normalcy for our daughter's sake, but the warmth was gone. The intimacy was gone. We were 2 people living in the same house, nothing more. Caroline didn't talk to her parents about my boundaries, or if she did, she didn't tell me what they said. The Sunday brunches continued, but just Caroline and Emma went. I stayed home, used the time to work on house projects or visit my own family. The Montgomerys didn't reach out to me, didn't call to ask why I wasn't at brunches anymore. Didn't seem to notice or care that I'd withdrawn from their family gatherings. That told me everything I needed to know about how much my presence had actually mattered to them. Thanksgiving came. Traditionally, we spent it with the Montgomerys, their big family gathering with extended relatives and elaborate meals and all the trappings of old money celebration. Carolyn assumed we'd go like always. I told her Emma and I would be spending Thanksgiving with my mother and sister. You can't do that, Carolini said. It's Thanksgiving. We always spend it with my family. You can spend it with your family. Emma and I will spend it with mine. You're going to split up our family on Thanksgiving. Your father split up our family when he made it clear I'm not really part of it. I'm just following his lead. This is petty no. This is boundaries. This is me refusing to spend holidays with people who don't consider me family. She went to her parents' Thanksgiving dinner alone. Tried to take Emma, but I held firm. Emma was spending Thanksgiving with me and my family. Caroline could join us if she wanted. She didn't. I spent the day at my mother's house with Rachel and her family, and it was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. No tension, no trying to prove myself, no feeling like an outsider, just family who accepted me completely, who valued me, who treated me like I belonged because I did belong. Emma had a wonderful time playing with her cousins, never once asked why Mommy wasn't there or why we weren't at Grandpa's house. She was adaptable, happy, as long as she was loved and cared for. Caroline came home that evening looking tired. You missed a nice dinner. I had a nice dinner with my family. Emma missed seeing her grandparents. Emma had a wonderful day with her grandmother and aunt and cousins. She didn't miss anything. My parents are very upset. Are they upset that I wasn't there? Or upset that I didn't bring Emma for them to see? She didn't answer. Didn't have to. We both knew they didn't care that I wasn't there. They just wanted access to their granddaughter. Tell your parents that if they want to see Emma, they can arrange it through you. Or they can call me directly and we can discuss supervised visits. But I'm not bringing her to family gatherings. I'm not teaching my daughter that it's normal for daddy to be treated as less than. You're being difficult. I'm being clear. Your parents excluded me from their family. Fine. But they don't get Emma without going through me. She's my daughter, too. The next day, Richard called me. First time he'd called me directly in months. His voice was cold, controlled, the voice of someone used to getting their way. Marcus, we need to discuss this situation. You're keeping my granddaughter from me over a petty disagreement. I'm not keeping Emma from anyone. I'm setting boundaries about how I'll be treated. You excluded me from your family dinner. You've spent 8 years making it clear I'm not really family. Fine. But you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to exclude me and then expect me to bring Emma around like nothing's wrong. This is between you and me. It has nothing to do with Emma. It has everything to do with Emma. She's learning from watching how you treat her father. She's learning that some people are family and some people are just married to family. She's learning that Grandpa doesn't respect Daddy. I won't have her learning those lessons. You're being unreasonable. I've never been anything but gracious to you. Gracious. That's an interesting word. You've been polite. I'll give you that. But you've never accepted me. You've never treated me like family. You've made that clear in countless ways over 8 years. I welcomed you into my family when you married my daughter. No, you tolerated me when your daughter married me. There's a difference, and I'm done pretending that tolerance is the same as acceptance. What do you want from me? I want respect. I want to be treated like family. I want to be included in family gatherings and family discussions. I want my daughter to grow up seeing her father being valued by her grandfather. That's what I want. And if I don't think those demands are reasonable, then Emma and I will build our lives separate from yours. You can see her through Caroline, you can have supervised visits, but you won't be part of her daily life. You won't get to play grandfather while disrespecting her father. There was a long silence. I could almost hear Richard calculating, trying to figure out the angle, trying to determine if I was bluffing. You'd really keep her from me over this. I'd really set boundaries that protect her from learning dysfunctional family dynamics. Yes, Caroline won't stand for this. Then Caroline needs to decide what's more important, her marriage and her daughter's well-being or her father's approval. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there holding my phone, hands shaking, realizing I'd just drawn a line in the sand with one of the most powerful men I'd ever met. But I felt more at peace than I had in weeks, because I'd finally stopped trying to earn his acceptance and started demanding basic respect. That evening, Caroline came home from work looking stressed. My father called me. He's very upset. I'm sure he is. He said, "You're trying to manipulate him by using Emma as leverage. I'm setting boundaries." He doesn't like boundaries. That's not my problem. Marcus, he's my father. He's Emma's grandfather. We can't just cut him out of our lives. I'm not cutting him out. I'm asking him to treat me with basic respect. If he can't do that, if that's too much to ask after 8 years, then yes, our relationship with him will be limited. This is going to destroy my family. Your father destroyed our family when he made it clear I'm not really part of it. I'm just stopping pretending that's okay. She stood there in our living room, torn between the family she'd grown up in and the family she'd created with me. And I could see on her face that she still didn't know which one mattered more. I need you to decide. Caroline, I need you to choose. Because I can't keep living in limbo. I can't keep being married to someone who hasn't decided if I'm actually her priority. That's not fair. You're making me choose between my husband and my parents. No, your parents made you choose by refusing to treat your husband like family. I'm just refusing to pretend that's acceptable anymore. But yes, you do need to choose. Everyone has to choose eventually. You can't keep one foot in both worlds. You can't be both their daughter who goes along with excluding me and my wife who stands with me. You have to pick. She stood there crying, and part of me wanted to comfort her. The part that had spent 8 years trying to make her happy, trying to be good enough, trying to bridge the gap between her two worlds. But that part of me was exhausted. That part had tried hard enough. I need time, she said finally. You've had 8 years. How much more time do you need? I need to talk to my parents. I need to work through this. I can't just make this decision right now. Fine, take your time. But while you're deciding, I'm moving forward with my boundaries. Your parents aren't welcome in this house until they can treat me with respect. You can see them as much as you want, but Emma and I won't be at family gatherings until things change. My mother's Christmas party is in 3 weeks. It's a huge event. The whole family will be there. You're saying you won't go. I'm saying I won't go unless your parents make it clear I'm actually welcome. Not tolerated, welcome, valued, treated like family. They'll never do that if you're making demands. Then I guess I'm not. Going to the Christmas party. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the Marcus who'd spent 8 years bending and accommodating and trying to earn acceptance was a stranger to both of us now. This Marcus, the one with boundaries and self-respect, was someone new. I don't know if our marriage can survive this, she said quietly. I don't know either. But I know it definitely can't survive the way things have been. So either we move forward to something better, or we acknowledge it's over. But we can't keep living in this in-between space where I'm your husband in name but treated as less than by your family. She went upstairs without another word. I heard the bedroom door close, heard her on the phone, probably calling her mother or her father or both, telling them about my unreasonable demands, about how difficult I was being, about how I was destroying the family with my need for respect. Let her tell them whatever she wanted. I was done caring what the Montgomerys thought of me, done trying to prove myself worthy, done accepting crumbs and pretending they were a feast. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. Caroline barely spoke to me. She went to work, took care of Emma when it was her turn, spent a lot of time on the phone with her mother. I knew she was trying to figure out how to handle the situation, trying to find some compromise that would satisfy everyone, but there wasn't a compromise. Not on this. Either her parents treated me like family or they didn't. Either Caroline stood with me or she didn't. Either our marriage mattered more than her parents' approval or it didn't. 2 days before the Christmas party, Carolyn came to me with what she clearly thought was a solution. I talked to Dad. He's willing to include you in future family dinners if you'll agree to. Attend the Christmas party and stop making a fuss about Thanksgiving. Stop making a fuss. That's how he sees it. I'm making a fuss. Those were my words, not his. But Marcus, this is him offering an olive branch. He's agreeing to include you more. Isn't that what you wanted? What I wanted was for him to acknowledge that excluding me was wrong. What I wanted was an apology. What I wanted was genuine acceptance, not a grudging agreement to include me because I'm holding Emma hostage. You're not going to get an apology. That's not who my father is. This is as close as he'll get to admitting he was wrong. Then I guess we're at an impasse. Because I'm not going to that Christmas party to pretend everything's fine when nothing has actually changed. Something has changed. He's agreeing to include you in family dinners out of obligation, not respect. That's not good enough. It's never going to be good enough for you, is it? You want him to grovel. You want him to admit he was wrong. You want him to completely change who he is. That's not reasonable, Marcus. What's not reasonable is expecting me to accept less than basic respect after 8 years of marriage. What's not reasonable is thinking I should be grateful for grudge and inclusion instead of expecting genuine acceptance. She looked at me with something like despair. I can't fix this. I can't make my father be who you want him to be, and I can't make you accept him as he is. We're stuck. We're not stuck. You're choosing not to move forward. You're choosing your father's comfort over your husband's dignity. That's not being stuck. That's making a choice. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell your father that the way he's treated me for 8 years is wrong. I want you to set boundaries about how your family treats me. I want you to skip the Christmas party with me, to stand with me instead of them. I want you to choose me, Caroline, just once. Choose me. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I can't choose. They're my family. I'm your family too. Or I'm supposed to be. It's different. It shouldn't be. We stood there in our living room, the space between us feeling like miles instead of feet. And I knew this was over. This marriage was over because she'd made her choice. Even if she couldn't say it out loud, she chose them. She'd always chosen them. I've just been too blind or too hopeful to see it clearly until now. I think we should separate, I said quietly. I think you should move back to your parents' house for a while. I'll stay here with Emma. We can work out a custody arrangement through lawyers. You want a divorce? I want a wife who chooses me. Since I don't have that, yes, I think we should divorce. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I felt bad for her, but not bad enough to take it back. Not bad enough to keep living like this. I love you, she said through her tears. I know, but you don't love me more than you love your father's approval. And that's the problem. I need to be someone's first choice. I need to be in a relationship where I'm valued and respected. I can't be that with you. Not when your parents come first. We have a daughter. We do. And we'll both be good parents to her. But we don't have to be married to do that. In fact, I think we'll be better parents if we're not trying to navigate this impossible situation anymore. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face. Is there anything I can do? Anything that would make you change your mind? You'd have to choose me completely. You'd have to set real boundaries with your parents. You'd have to skip that Christmas party and stand with me. You'd have to tell your father that his treatment of me was wrong and won't be tolerated anymore. You'd have to put our marriage first. She sat there on the couch, crying, and didn't say she'd do any of those things, because she couldn't or wouldn't. Either way, the result was the same. I'll move out this weekend, she said finally. I'll stay with my parents while we figure out the divorce. Okay, can I still see Emma? Of course. We'll work out a schedule. She needs her mother and my parents. Can they still see her? Through you. Yes. And when they're ready to treat me with respect, we can discuss direct visits. But not until then. She nodded, still crying. Accepting terms she couldn't change because she'd made her choice and now had to live with the consequences. That weekend, Carolyn packed her things and moved back to the Montgomery estate. Emma cried when Mommy left. Didn't understand why Mommy wasn't living with us anymore. I held her and explained as best you can explain complex adult problems to a 4-year-old. Mommy and Daddy loved her very much. This wasn't about her. Sometimes adults needed to live separately. She'd still see Mommy all the time. After Emma was asleep that night, I sat in the quiet house and felt the weight of it all settle on me. I'd just blown up my marriage. Just become a single father. Just separated my daughter from her mother because I couldn't accept being treated as less than. Had I done the right thing? I didn't know, but I knew I'd done the only thing I could do while maintaining myself. I couldn't keep living that way. Couldn't keep being the outsider in my own family. Couldn't keep accepting treatment that diminished me while pretending it was normal. The divorce proceedings started a month later. Caroline's family hired expensive attorneys. I got a good one too. Spent money I didn't really have, fought for joint custody and fair division of assets. The house was in both our names, bought partly with Montgomery money. They wanted it back. I refused. I'd been paying the mortgage for 6 years. I'd earned that house. Eventually, we reached a settlement. Joint custody, Emma splitting time between us. I kept the house. Caroline got her family money that she'd kept separate anyway. No alimony on either side, a clean break. The whole process took 9 months. 9 months of legal meetings and negotiation and the slowly grinding machinery of divorce. 9 months of Emma adjusting to 2 households. 9 months of me building a new life as a single father. Richard Montgomery never spoke to me again. Never called, never reached out, never acknowledged that maybe he'd played a role in the destruction of his daughter's marriage. Patricia sent a card once saying she was sorry things had ended this way, that she'd always thought I was a good person. But she didn't say she thought her husband had been wrong. Didn't say she'd told him he should have treated me better, just that she was sorry. Caroline and I had developed a functional co-parenting relationship. Polite, practical, focused on Emma's needs. We coordinated schedules and attended school events and managed to be civil at drop-offs and pickups, but the warmth was gone, the intimacy, the belief that we were partners building a life together. Emma adjusted better than I'd feared. She loved both her parents, loved both her houses, seemed to accept that this was just how things were now. She still saw her Montgomery grandparents through Caroline. I had no idea what they told her about me, what story they constructed to explain why Daddy wasn't at family gatherings anymore. But Emma never treated me differently, never seemed to think less of me. So I figured whatever story they told, it wasn't too damaging. 2 years after my divorce, I was living a completely different life. I'd been promoted at work, was making good money, had full custody of Emma half the time. I'd bought new furniture for the house, made it mine instead of ours. I'd started dating again, cautiously, learning to trust again after having my trust so thoroughly betrayed. I ran into Richard Montgomery once at a charity event my company sponsored. He was there with Patricia, both of them dressed immaculately, moving through the crowd like the society royalty they were. Our eyes met across the room. He looked away first. I didn't feel anger seeing him. Didn't feel hurt. Mostly just felt indifferent. He was just some wealthy guy who'd never seen me as good enough for his daughter. That was his problem, not mine. I'd stopped needing his approval. Stopped caring what he thought of me. That was freedom. Real freedom. Not having to perform for someone else's acceptance. Not having to prove myself worthy to people who decided I wasn't worthy before they met me. not having to contort myself into someone I wasn't just to fit into a family that had no room for me. Caroline remarried 3 years after our divorce, a guy named Preston Whitmore from an old money family. Exactly the kind of guy Richard had probably always hoped she'd end up with. I met him once at an Emma event. He's Simitfini, polite, appropriate from the right background, everything I'd never been. Emma told me Grandpa really liked Preston, that he and Mommy went to Sunday brunches at the Montgomery estate, that Preston fit right in with the family. I smiled and told Emma I was glad Mommy was happy. And I meant it. I didn't want Caroline to be unhappy. I just couldn't be the person she needed me to be, which is someone willing to accept less than I deserved. Looking back now, 5 years after that text message about the family dinner I wasn't invited to, I can see the whole arc clearly. The years of trying to prove myself, the moment of clarity when I finally saw the truth. The difficult decision to demand respect instead of accepting exclusion. The consequences of that decision, the rebuilding that followed. Would I have done anything differently? Maybe I would have seen the truth sooner, before I invested 8 years in a marriage that was built on a foundation of me being less than. Maybe I would have set boundaries earlier instead of accepting treatment that diminished me. But maybe everything happened exactly as it needed to. Maybe I needed those 8 years to learn what I'd accept and what I wouldn't. Maybe I needed to try as hard as I did before giving up, so I'd know I'd done everything possible. Maybe I needed to go through all of that to become someone who valued himself enough to walk away from people who didn't value him. Emma's 8 now. She understands more about why her parents aren't together. I've never badmouthed Carolyn or her family. I've just told Emma that sometimes adults have different ideas about how family should work, and sometimes that means they can't live together anymore. She seems to accept that. She still sees her Montgomery grandparents regularly. I have no idea if Richard ever thinks about his role in the dissolution of his daughter's marriage. No idea if he ever wonders if maybe he should have treated me better, included me more, accepted me as family. Probably not. People like Richard Montgomery don't second-guess themselves. They make decisions and expect everyone else to adapt. I've built a good life for myself and Emma. We have our routines, our traditions, our own little family of 2. She knows she's loved, knows both her parents prioritize her, knows she's secure, even if her family doesn't look like everyone else's. And I've learned lessons I'll carry forever about the importance of knowing your worth, about the danger of trying to earn acceptance from people who've already decided you're not acceptable, about the difference between tolerance and acceptance, between being someone's spouse and being someone's priority. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about respect and acceptance and valuing someone for who they are instead of judging them for who they're not. My mother and sister, their family, Emma, she's family. The friends who stood by me through the divorce, their family, the Montgomerys, they were just people my wife was related to. And that's okay. If you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, if you're trying to earn acceptance from your partner's family, if you're being treated as less than and told that's just how things are, let me tell you something. It's not how things should be. You deserve to be with someone who chooses you, who stands with you, who doesn't expect you to accept disrespect for the sake of family harmony. You deserve to be someone's first choice, not their compromise. You deserve to be in a family that values you, not just tolerates you. You deserve respect and acceptance and genuine belonging. And if you're not getting those things, if you're being excluded from family dinners after years of marriage, if you're being told you're not really family despite having the papers that say you are, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to demand better. It won't be easy. Walking away from a marriage, even a dysfunctional one, is hard. Starting over is hard. Co-parenting is hard. Building a new life from scratch is hard. But staying in a situation where you're constantly diminished, where you're always trying to prove yourself worthy, where you're never quite good enough no matter what you do, that's harder. I spent 8 years trying to be part of a family that had no place for me. I spent 8 years trying to earn approval from a man who decided I wasn't good enough before he even met me. I spent 8 years married to a woman who loved me but loved her father's approval more. Those were 8 years I'll never get back. But they taught me who I am and what I'll accept and what I won't. They taught me the difference between being in a relationship and being valued in a relationship. They taught me that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who don't treat you right, even if those people are family. My wife's dad arranged a dinner for family only, and that's when I realized I was never family. Not to him, not really even to her. I was just the guy who married his daughter, the father of his grandchild. someone useful but not essential, someone to be tolerated but not accepted. And once I realized that, once I stopped trying to change that reality and just accepted it for what it was, I was free. Free to build a life with people who actually valued me. Free to be myself instead of constantly performing for approval I'd never get. Free to teach my daughter that she should never accept being treated as less than. That she should demand respect and acceptance. That she should know her worth. That's the lesson. That's what I learned from being excluded from that family dinner. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you who they really are and how they really see you. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is believing them and acting accordingly. Have you ever been made to feel like you're not really part of your partner's family? Have you ever had to choose between your relationship and your self-respect? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences helps us process them. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you see your own situation more clearly, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Let's build a community of people who know their worth and won't settle for less. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to value yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to know you're worthy. You just need the courage to walk away from people who don't see your value and toward people who do. That's what I did. That's what I'm still doing. And my life is better for it. You deserve better to believe it and then start building it.